Welcome to episode 423 of the Red Dirt Agronomy Podcast. I am Dave Deacon, and if we got a really fun episode for you. As you probably already know, we took the show on the road about a month ago and headed up to Wichita for the High Plains Journal Live. We had a great time rubbing elbows with producers from across Oklahoma and Kansas who were there to learn from some of the leaders in all areas of agriculture. And we got to throw a headset on many of them and talk to them on the podcast. This week, we're talking with Aaron Harries of Kansas Wheat to learn how they are working within the state of Kansas and around the globe to help grow markets for wheat while helping researchers do their part to create a better wheat plant. Our chat with Aaron is coming up in a minute, but first, if you're new to the Red Dirt Agronomy Podcast, I would like to welcome you and invite you to hit that follow button where you get your podcasts. It's just an easy way to always make sure that you get the latest episodes every time. Just a reminder, you will be able to find all of the information we talk about on this episode and past episodes on our website, reddirtagronomy.com. Let's kick things off with a quick trip around the booth for an introduction to the dream team of dirt and everything that grows from it. Let's start with Oklahoma State University Extension Precision Nutrient Management Specialist.
Special is exactly the word that's used to describe my program.
Dr. Brian Arnell. And across from him is a postdoctorate in the Plant and Soil Sciences Department at Oklahoma State University.
Well, we are that. I can promise you that. We roll into town. Everybody knows.
Dr. Radon Sherry. Now, with all the formalities out of the way, let's kick off our conversation with Aaron Harries of Kansas Wheat that was recorded about a month ago at High Plains Journal Live. So, without further ado, on to the episode. You are listening to the Red Dirt Agronomy Podcast. We're up here at the High Plains Journal Live event, and this has been really cool. A lot of great presentations up on, I guess, 4 stages, and folks have really had some great questions for different presenters, and Brian had some earlier, and getting ready to do another one here not before too long. Mm-hmm. And in that time, I was able to corner Aaron Harries with Kansas Wheat. Now, in full disclosure here, we also produce a podcast called
Wheat's on Your Mind.
Yeah, those golden tones from Wheat's on Your Mind, of course.
Do we get a charge for that?
That's a sponsor
spot. I want some royalties.
Who is paying for this episode?
Right. But this is, I just wanted to throw that out there that we produce the Wheat's on Your Mind podcast. And kind of just, let's kick things off. What do you cover in the podcast?
Everything wheat related, obviously, but we even go off on tangents a little bit. We have a recent episode where we talked with an author who studies food history, about the role that wheat plays in developing civilization over the last 10,000 years and fun stuff. And, we've previously had an episode at 2024 was the 150th anniversary of the Mennonites bringing turkey red winter wheat to the central plains of the United States, which, changed everything. It's why we have jobs.
Exactly right.
And so that was a big deal. But then, we do timely stuff on research too. We've had a bad wheat disease here in Kansas this year in the Central Plains, and so we're trying to get the word out on that. But that's the beauty of the podcast. It gives us kind of free range to go pretty wide, and I think it's relevant as long as we use the word wheat once in each episode. It still counts.
Kansas Wheat's still willing to pay.
Right,
yeah.
I one of the big takeaways from one of the episodes was the railroad system and how that impacted how towns are laid out across not only Kansas, Oklahoma. I mean, you can see it in Oklahoma. There's ghost towns where there was an elevator, but now that elevator's gone and the town has moved on, but the train track's still there.
Yeah, and I encourage people to look at old map of railroads, and the railroads owned land, the right-of-way, of course, along the railroads. And when they brought the Mennonites over, they donated the land to the Mennonites, but they did it in checkerboard fashion. Every other alternating section along the railroad tracks. And I haven't found an explanation for why that was. It's like they wanted to retain separation between those. But, so the railroads recruited the Mennonites, built houses, built schools, built churches for them. Just, it's almost like NIL money, right?
This is fascinating.
For athletes these days. And they recruited them like athletes because they knew that wheat production was going to put something on their trains
Yeah.
to send back to the East Coast. So they weren't shipping cars empty, which the
Yeah.
railroads don't like to do it today either,
Yeah.
right? They
Yeah.
don't like, they want the cars full going both ways. So things haven't changed that much, but yeah, it's and right now, railroad service is a little bit different.
That's true.
But
Well, and just the spacing of the towns, wasn't it like every 12 miles there was an elevator because it took 6 miles or a farmer was willing to travel 6 miles to go, take care of their crop.
yeah, and that goes all the way back to horses and wagons. Yeah, of
That's
course.
amazing. Yeah.
I did not think we'd go there this early. That's
There you
cool.
go. There you go.
You'll find that I'm a depth of useless information. That
One day
Well,
on
I will
Jeopardy.
use it later, so that's the fun thing is I will find a way to interject that little factoid.
Well, and as part of that, you're also, like I say, the vice president of research for Kansas Wheat. Kind of talk about what your role is there.
Yeah, so I oversee kind of how we do funding with the checkoff dollars that we collect for the Kansas Wheat Commission, which in Kansas right now is 2 pennies on every bushel of wheat that is sold in the state of Kansas. And so we just go through a proposal process where researchers, mostly from K-State, submit research projects to us on an annual basis. And we have a committee and a board system. We review all those applications. So, my degree is in ag communications, but I've been immersed in wheat research for the last 19 years, and I really love it. I mean, it's fascinating to see how things have evolved, how research is changing dramatically. And you've heard me say it before, Dave. I think we're entering the golden age of wheat research in the next 10 to 20 years.
Yeah.
The stars are aligning, and we're at an intersection of technology, and we're going to be doing things with wheat, not just from a genetic side, but from an agronomic side that we haven't seen in the previous 100 years. So it's an exciting time. And of course, we have our farmer-owned and built Wheat Innovation Center in Manhattan, Kansas, which was built to add on to the research capacity of the public wheat breeding program.
Right. So,
there's always been a lot of private sector money in corn and soybeans and the other crops. And, we've seen an uptick in that in recent years in wheat. So I'm pretty excited about it.
So talking research, and we just had a conversation with Dusty Gallagher talking the double haploid. Want to hear your take. How do you walk through the process of double haploid, and how has it impacted Kansas wheat?
Well, double haploids are kind of a wheat breeding shortcut is what I call them. And, getting to a true breeding line or making sure the wheat all looks alike when a farmer plants it identical genetically, it takes 5 to 6 years in the normal process. And that double haploid process can really shave a lot of years off that 4 or 5 years time. So it's magic, really. It involves sweet corn pollen and the birds and the bees, and so I won't bore everybody with that. But we've seen those varieties come out now. The varieties are out there that have used that double haploid process, and it's just one layer in that research cake, right? I mean, you start stacking these research processes on top of each other, and as well as I do, we've got that whole pipeline of genetics that's always full and always coming through, and you want to release something that's better than what it's following, and it can be better in a number of different ways, yield, quality-wise, but specific traits. And so double haploids let you get those discoveries into your new varieties a lot faster. And of course, we leverage a lot of the ancient wheat genetics. There's a collection of seeds from the ancient relatives, grass species of wheat in the Kansas Wheat Innovation Center, and find a lot of traits in there. And so if you combine new technologies like we have now with gene editing, we're just kind of on the new frontier of that. And you stack that with double haploids, things like single seed descent, speed breeding. And, someday we're going to get to the point where it takes 4 or 5 years to get a new variety out instead of 10 to 12. Who knows? Someday maybe we'll be 3D printing seeds and you could do even faster than that.
Right,
but, everything's on the radar, I think.
You made an interesting comment, which it makes I get it and I understand it. I think Radin does too. The farmer's looking for uniformity and the breeder's looking for uniformity. Somebody that doesn't grow wheat or doesn't farm may not understand that statement. Can you talk to what you mean by, one, that there could be diversity within what a breeder has, and then why a farmer would want uniformity? Yeah. Because we always hear about diversity is good.
Yeah, that's right. And I'll tiptoe around that one. In the crops in the field, so varieties have a tendency to segregate themselves back out. There's another word there. You separate back into the mother and father parent plant, right? And so we've seen that happen sometimes. There are varieties, hard red winter wheat varieties, that have a hard white wheat parent, and you'll get mixed seed color in there. Presents a whole nother level of problems. So getting to that purity in those wheat varieties, making sure that it's going to hold that variety status, because varieties aren't like hybrids. Over time, they're going to regress back into their parents, and that's why we have that constant pipeline out there. But so with double haploids, when you're creating double haploids, what that farmer's planting in the bag is 100% genetically identical. Through traditional breeding processes, you're maybe getting 85%, 90% identical. So it's just a different level of game in that purity, and that means you're getting what you want out of that variety.
Which means traits. It means all the things, even standard crop height, but we're talking traits. Maybe there's it's a disease package or something that you don't have 10 or 15% off that can still be impacted.
Yep, exactly.
Well, and it's always interesting to talk to people about saving wheat seed and how long you can continue to save wheat seed and plant the same variety over and over again. At some point, you're not even planting the same variety that you bought as certified seed. And sometimes I think people forget that. They just put it in the bin, pull it out, year in and year out, and by the time it's over, it's not even the same.
Yeah.
And that's something that comes up a lot.
And that's the reason why we've got to continue to come out with things that are better and better to make that incentive to, not keep that seed over and over again. And so I think done a pretty good job of that.
Now, I know Kansas Wheat has, maybe wrong, new marketing coming out. You guys are doing some, not programs, but more educational.
Yep.
Talk about some of the stuff you guys are doing at Kansas Wheat.
Well, we got a couple of programs I might mention. One is called Wheat RX program, which is a communications vehicle we're using. So farmers fund all this wheat research through the checkoff, and we really want to be able to communicate that to the farmers, right? If they're paying for all that research, we want to get that education out there. So we worked with K-State, and we cooperate with them, and Wheat RX is a series of publications that really breaks down specific wheat topics, and then we do Wheat RX schools across the state. And ultimately, the line is that we're going to get to a day where you release a variety, and it's packaged with its economic agronomic prescription to go along with that variety. So, Farmer A is in Smith County, Kansas. He plants the variety Bob Dole, and he enters some data, soil types, annual rainfall, AI layers onto this obviously too, and it's going to say, what's your yield goal or what's your quality goal? What's this? Here's your prescription package to go along with that variety. And we're not far off from something like that. And think of the game changer that's going to be.
Yeah.
And so that's what Wheat RX is.
I'd like to add on to that. I've been to a lot of the Wheat RX, and I'd tell anybody in Oklahoma
There's a
that's
speaker
listening,
at one,
I get to speak often, is that they're really great programs. And so even if you're not in Kansas, if you're an Oklahoma farmer, especially in those tier counties that are near Kansas, really consider finding a Wheat RX that's in your region, because they do go across the state from Wichita out to Dodge, somewhere in that range. They're running around, but look for those programs, because I've always been very impressed with the speaker panels, irregardless of them bringing me or not. Always impressed with the speaker panels and the quality of topics and the way they approach things. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that it's a really well done program.
And what we found out, Brian, is there's a thirst for this kind of stuff out there too.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's one thing to have field days, which are great, pre-plant schools, which are great like that, but really to go in depth and hear what's on the cutting edge of research has been pretty popular. So we're going to keep doing that. We have a campaign going on right now, Beyond the Value of the Grain for Wheat, and what this is targeting messaging to explain to lenders, farmers, absentee landlords, out-of-state landlords. You see a farmer, let's say you're a landlord in Arizona and you own some farmland in Kansas, and your farmer's growing wheat in that rotation. They're saying, you're getting paid $4 for this bushel of wheat economically. Why aren't you growing corn or something like this? And what Beyond the Value of the Grain does is demonstrates to that landowner that say, we've got to look at the whole system here and what wheat brings to that rotation. In other words, the heavy residue. Gosh, we've had some really good straw this year and last year in Kansas, which we haven't had for a while. And that straw in those fields, you have a 100-bushel wheat field, right?
Yeah.
The straw is going to be there for 4 or 5 years.
Right. Right.
And what it means for the corn crop following that is just huge. The yield gain in that. And so what we're trying to do with Beyond the Value of the Grain is kind of quantify, even monetize those values that you don't associate with the bushel of wheat itself.
Right.
And so we're going to be doing more and more research on that. And I think in the High Plains, it's in our best interest to look at the systems approach, because sometimes programs are designed for the I states, conservation programs, renewable fuel programs that are talking about cover crops and everything like that. And the High Plains get left out. And we're just a different animal.
Yeah.
And you can't look at just one crop. You have to look at the system.
I was up at this National Strip Till Conference last week, and the biggest conversation is, how do we get rid of residue? Then they asked me, I was like, that is not my goal.
Yeah.
My goal is not the destruction of residue. My goal is, how can I keep residue on as long as possible? And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, it saves us. We have to have carbon on the surface. We don't want to terminate wheat when it's tiny so that it gets... I was like, they're all about the cover crops and rotation so they get more nutrients. I'm like, we're a carbon... We need carbon on the surface. That is what we need. And wheat, I mean, you can't get much better, because if you look at the residues, if you just go corn, soy, and wheat, soy residue is almost non-existent. You have a stick at the end of the year, much like cotton. So we can throw cotton in there too. The leaves usually blow off, and they're in the neighbor's field somewhere. Corn has a lot of residue, a lot of leafy residue, but even the stalks. But it's got a nutrient ratio that allows it to break down much quicker. And so, it's
especially in our environment, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas.
Well, I mean, anyway, I mean, even you're right. They have a lot more residue in the I states, but the wheat straw, it's a carbon and nitrogen ratio. So I talk to my students that think about things that are good for cover. Think of it as something that you would feed your show horse or your cattle. Is that the better the feed quality, the quicker it's going to break down. It will provide nutrients, but it won't provide soil moisture.
Yeah, and Beyond the Value of the Grain, Oklahoma, especially southern Kansas, dual purpose wheat, grazing, any gain on cattle is a lot of money right now. and obviously the things like water conservation, of course. And so we've just really kind of put that together, and we're trying to get that word out, because we're in an environment right now where we're saying, man, why am I planting wheat? And we just want to be in front of people and say, this is why you're planting wheat.
How many grazed acres do you think there are in Kansas, like dual purpose? Yeah,
we never get a really good handle on that. I always say it's in the neighborhood 5 to 10% of our acres.
Really?
I think.
Okay.
Yeah. And it depends upon the fall, right?
That's true.
And when we get things in, but we're seeing a lot of acres that might have been wheat graze go over to triticale.
Yeah.
And so that's a big deal too.
So right now, there's been a push for Fight the Mite. Kind of talk about the efforts of Kansas Wheat to help educate wheat producers, producers of anything right now, about the importance of that.
Yeah. So the wheat streak mosaic virus complex, which is wheat streak, triticum mosaic virus, and High Plains mosaic virus, was devastating in Kansas this year.
Yeah.
Just really wiping out some fields, and USDA knocked our total production down from 350 million down to 336, and I think a lot of that was due to disease, because we didn't know how it was going to affect test weights and yields, but we're starting to see that. And so Fight the Mite is about the wheat curl mite, which is the vector for those diseases.
Yeah.
And we've done different campaigns, but when it comes down to its essence, it's about starving that mite and reducing those populations. And it's a chess match, right? Because there are 3 different ways you can affect this, by volunteer wheat control, by genetic resistance within your varieties that you choose, but it's also situational awareness of know what you're planting where.
Yeah.
Right. And then, this disease complex has moved from west east, into the central parts of the state. And it's, has to do again with cropping systems, and that's another dimension of that chess game, because we've got that cover crop factor out there right now, and this wheat mite likes those grassy species, and so that's that green bridge. So K-State has come out with new recommendations this year that they're experimenting around with. I think it's great. We've always previously told people to have your wheat dead for 2 weeks, your volunteer wheat dead for 2 weeks prior to planting your new wheat crop, and what they've gone is from corner of the state to corner of the state is defined 30-day wheat-free windows to have your volunteer wheat dead from day one to day. So for Northwest Kansas, it'd be like through August 30th through September 30th, you want to have your volunteer wheat dead.
And it's that regulatory at this point?
It's not regulatory. Okay. It's instead of having each farmer trying to calculate in their head what that means, and then your planting date, your neighbor might be 2 weeks later. Yeah. So by defining these 30-day windows, it's trying to have that community goal in this region. Let's all try to work together to have all of our volunteer wheat dead during this period of time. So we'll see how it works out. I mean, it's nice to see a graphic that shows you some dates and says, and volunteer wheat doesn't stop everything, but it's the big problem.
Oh yeah.
And I think you guys had in Oklahoma and in Kansas, there was a lot of wind and shatter and then a lot of water.
Yeah, this is going to be
big volunteer wheat year. So it's we need to get on top of this, since that's why we're trying to stay in front of it. We're going to pray for a cold fall, which we haven't had in a while. We've had these warm falls just to keep those mite populations. I was talking with our CEO, Justin. I think the last time we had a bad mite year, bad virus year, the following fall was cool. And so Mother Nature sometimes takes care of itself. But, boy, we're looking at a disaster if we don't do something before next year.
We have an interesting dynamic, of course, with so many grazed acres. Volunteer is a reward.
Right.
We don't have to re-sow, or we can just sow extra into it.
Yeah.
And so especially as you move west into northwest Oklahoma, the Panhandle, and things like that, it becomes a problem. I mean, we've seen it. I know we have had research trials at the station out near Guyman, and Wheat Street comes in, and I mean it's done.
Yeah.
And so it's always really interesting, especially that rancher farmer dynamic and people that are both, and it makes it interesting.
And that's that situational awareness component of it. We're not trying to say don't plant cover crops or don't graze, but just be aware if you're going to be in that area, you better select your variety for that situation. You better work with your neighbor, or if you're going to cover a crop, maybe select your species a little bit more carefully in what you're going to do.
Yeah.
So it's that 3 slices of the pie: genetics, volunteer wheat, and being aware of where you are and what's next door.
So, Aaron, how long have you been with Kansas Wheat?
I have been there for 19 years. So,
which is what I was thinking.
Yeah, I worked for the state Kansas Grain and Feed Association and Kansas Fertilizer and Chemical Association right out of K-State. Worked for them for about 10 years. Came over to Kansas Wheat in 2006, and obviously landed on a good thing if I've been there for that long. But the transition was easy because my grain and feed buddies, that dynamic, I still work with them obviously a lot from the wheat perspective. So been pretty blessed.
Well, so this is a question I like to ask a lot. How in that time, and so you got basically 2 decades, how has Kansas Wheat, the organization, or just Kansas Wheat.
Kansas.
Yeah. How's that changed over the last 20 years?
Oh, it's huge, right? I mean, so the organizations, we're unique in Kansas in that our commission's not a state entity anymore. And years ago, our wheat growers and wheat commission decided we're going to have the same staff for both organizations.
Oh, yeah.
2 separate boards, one's still the producer grower trade association, one's still the checkoff. But it's worked together real nicely, and it's been a good model to follow. But in terms of the wheat crop, 19 years ago, 20 years ago, we didn't treat the crop that well, right? It was that fit in and put it in the ground, and the intensive management that we've seen being adopted in the last 10 years. It's just been fun to watch. I just love it, hearing stories that some of these guys tell. And I'm not smart enough collecting all the seeding rates and talking about populations and just experimenting. I love how farmers do their own research. Right?
Yeah, that's true.
And so it behooves guys from Oklahoma State or K-State to learn from the farmers, and you've all done a good job of that, learning from them up, on that whole farm scale. So that's one part of it, just to see what we can do with wheat. We had 110 bushel wheat in southwest Kansas this year. We know what we can do with yields. And sort of the holy grail of winter wheat, of course, is high yield and high protein. We think we can get there too. I mean, you've shown some information that shows that. So that's kind of one of the things that's been changing pretty dramatically. But I'm really excited about what's going to happen in the next 9 to 10 years before I retire. Hope in terms of seed technology. I think we're really pivoting on some good things now. You probably have talked with Dusty about GMO wheat. I think we're entering that era now. And we just talked about the viral diseases. There are traits on the shelf at K-State and Heartland Plant Innovations in Manhattan right now that could cure all those viruses.
Wow.
And they're GMO traits. But the marketplace hasn't been ready for them.
Yeah.
But we're starting to move down that road now. And I hope to see that.
So was the change in the Kansas farmer look and approach to wheat, was it a slow roll, or was there something that just kind of triggered it? And you say that we just slowly been changing over time, or was there one or two things that you felt like might have pushed that adoption for more management?
Well, I think we had a boom there for a while where commodity prices were really good, and so that encouraged everybody to maximize. But I've got to give up, sometimes you got to get lucky. Sometimes timing is good, and this will be a sore spot. But we stole a guy from Oklahoma State named Romulo Lolato.
Romulo.
Yeah,
Romulo.
and my favorite Brazilian. But, he's made a huge impact in that extension component of it and research component of it. And we've got a team second to none in wheat research at K-State right now. And, we want to make hay while the sun shines, right? We're
second to one.
Yeah. Second to one. and it's hard to keep talented guys like you at universities, and so you want to do the most you can with them while you got them. And so it's we try to fund research through our checkoff. We've also created our own research foundation where we've raised close to $7 million to that. And we want to be able to just keep the research funding at where it is to make great things happen. So, I mean, long story short, to answer your question, I think really in the last 10 years is kind of when I've seen that dramatic improvement. And you could kind of sense, we were tired of lagging behind corn and soybeans. And we kind of put a flag in the ground when we built that innovation center. Our farmer leaders said we want to demonstrate to the industry that we're ready to move forward with that. And boy, we've got some great public wheat breeding programs in the country right now. There's a lot of talent, between Oklahoma State and K-State, North Dakota. So I'm glad to be in the line of work I am.
So from a funding, you briefly mentioned the funding, but how has that changed over the years? I mean, federal dollars have fluctuated over the years, checkoff and such. Kind of walk us through that. Yeah.
So the federal research thing goes up and down, right? And that's a frustration, and we've seen a little bit of that recently with cutting of some USDA staff and thing. But research is subject to inflation just like everything else. Yeah. And boy, that's really gone up in the last 5 years, the cost of research itself. We are not able to fund as many projects with the same amount of dollars as we used to be. It's just no getting around that. And there's been a couple of times where the universities had to lean on us to, maybe supplement some salaries, which we've been glad to do and keep doing that. But that's why going forward, we kind of created this foundation because we wanted to be able to maintain a floor under our wheat research, and foundations can build money. And if you have that, we might, someday we might have to go in and adjust our checkoff again. We haven't done that since 2013.
That's not bad. You've been able to.
Yeah. We like to work within our means, right? We want to demonstrate to our farmers that we're going to be as efficient with your money as we possibly can. But tip of the hat to my friend and our CEO, Justin Gilpin. He does a great job developing relationships with the industry and the whole grain chain, right? We've got to work together from the universities to the farmers to the millers and the bakers. And, the wheat industry has been guilty in the past of not being aligned and not working together on some things. And so I think we all need to do our part to change that, especially with the opportunities going forward. And we've really got some good leadership in place right now, so I'm optimistic.
Speaking of working together,
how
would it look for Orange to submit a proposal to do work in purple country?
Well, it would have to be really special.
Man,
we are that. I can promise you that.
No,
we roll in down. Everybody
special
knows.
is exactly
Some of the
the
most
word that
special
uses
people.
to describe my program.
But I'm glad you brought that up. There's a lot of collaboration going on now between Oklahoma State and K-State in our public breeding programs and Colorado State. And we are actually looking at joint funding of some projects. It's tricky. They like the money to be spent in the state where it's coming from. That doesn't mean we can't collaborate on projects.
Yeah.
And it's, the day and age, you can't have inefficiencies, have replication of the same research in the same universities. And so, it's nice to see that where Brett Carver is working with Alan Fritz up at Manhattan doing some work together. And so it's really neat to see.
I mean, even if you look at in the fertility realm where I'm at on what's happening, we got Dorovar in Manhattan, you got Lucas out west. I can handle, and they help me on the northeast and the west. And I'm don't plug your ears. I'm fairly active in Kansas in work and kind of stretching from basically Caldwell through Wichita, doing a lot of stuff in that region. But it even makes sense for the areas that we work in and all that. So there is a lot of collaboration. I just give you a hard time, but there's a ton that goes on there, and there's a lot of purple that bleeds into orange country and a lot of orange that bleeds into purple, proximity basis on who's doing what where.
Well, because the crops don't know they don't know political boundaries. So I mean,
and we have to remind ourselves, working for commodity organizations too, that farmers don't just grow wheat. Right? That's why I've talked about the whole cropping system thing, and we're going to be working closer, like with our corn and sorghum partners in Kansas, dealing with water issues, right? Because we're going to try to solve the water problem in Kansas, and we can't just single out crops. We've got to look at the cropping system, and so we want to be able to go to one of those groundwater management districts and say, what's the right cropping system for this county to meet your water goals?
Exactly.
And we don't want to necessarily eliminate crops, but we can find the rotation that includes these crops that's going to use the water that you're allocating for this use. So, let's head down that road. Let's collaborate and make it our effort to talk about a cropping system. I think it's going to be for the benefit of all of us.
What is Kansas Wheat as a group? What is the next thing? What's that 5 years down the road? What's that long range plan?
Well, we're trying to get more involved in water policy, and we're looking at things like triticale. Our mission, our law that created us doesn't allow us to do triticale research. So we might tweak things there. So maybe we can work a little bit on that. The GMO thing is big. We've got some GMO plants at the Wheat Innovation Center in Manhattan right now. It's really neat to see that. I mean, that's pretty historical to see something like that. So that's what we're working down, and it's always about finding new markets too. I mean, we could spend a whole another hour talking about trade issues right now, but
we've been avoiding that.
And that's the best conversation.
Wheat knocking on wood has been just kind of under the radar on this because most of our trading partners with wheat are exempt from these tariffs through the North American Free Trade Agreement, right? And so, and China's not been buying wheat. So the tariffs doesn't affect them. So our commodity brethren have been hit a lot harder by that. But we're always looking for new opportunities for marketplaces, and all eyes to South America and Central America for Central U.S. wheat. I mean, that's where the future is, and even further west than that. But I think those are the big things. I think, if I had to put number one at the top of the list, it's genetics technology. In the next 5 years, I think that's where the big breakthroughs are going to be.
one thing, and this is kind of a left turn in the conversation here, but one thing I've asked you before, where does Kansas wheat go? The wheat grown in Kansas, where does it go? Because I know a lot of the exported wheat from Oklahoma hops on the river. It goes down the Arkansas River to the Gulf of New Orleans, but or the Port of New Orleans. But you guys don't have a track like that to be able to hit a port so easily.
Yeah, we heavily rely on rail, and so a lot of our wheat goes across the border into Mexico, but the majority of it goes out through the Texas Gulf.
Okay.
From rail down to Kansas, down to the Texas Gulf, and goes out that way. And our exports, have ranged from, when wheat's $7, maybe 30% of our wheat gets exported to right now where we're exporting a lot of wheat.
Yeah.
Because it's a, I know farmers don't like the price, but it's a bargain for our overseas customers.
Oh, yeah.
And we got to whittle down the supply to make the price go up. And so the weak value of the dollar and the cheap wheat, we're exporting a lot of it right now.
Right.
So, but we're always trying to find domestic uses. We're doing some value-added things where we're trying to add value to a few acres out of the domestic wheat pool.
Right.
We got Durham wheat growing in Kansas now, which we have that program, Winter Durham, because there's pasta factories in Kansas City and in Colorado, and try to supplement that and just healthy things. And I guess if you'll let me get on my soapbox, when I get tours when I give tours of the Wheat Innovation Center, I don't want to pick on corn and soybeans, but wheat is a commodity, but we really need to educate people on how it's a very specialized food ingredient.
Yeah.
It's much more than a commodity. And while we treat it like a commodity in many cases, it has the capacity to be so much more than that. Brett Carver working on high fiber and antioxidants and things like that. And if we're getting into this Maha era of making food healthy again, when we're amongst friends here, we know wheat is healthy.
Yeah.
We know you got to process it to eat it. But the nutrition part is something we really need to lean heavily on and get that word out there. So, yep, that's where our wheat goes. I mean, roughly 50-50 overseas. And of course we've got a lot of mills in Kansas, obviously, but the wheat finds its way in a lot of places.
I've got one last question, and we can delete it off the recording. I say that a lot, just so you know.
So you'll hear it in the final cut.
Yeah. When you have messages come out, like the current message you're hearing a lot on social media is that I eat bread in the U.S. and it's horrible for me, and I go to Europe, and because of their breeding and the way they raise wheat, it doesn't affect my gut. In somebody in your position, do you ever think about, you see that social media like we need to make a stance, or does that make sense what I'm saying as far as Kansas wheat is? At what point do you step a foot out and say, you know what, you might have some facts wrong?
Yeah, and it's hard to do, right? Even though we are, pat ourselves on the back, the experts, and we know what the facts are, right? And it's getting people to listen to you and believe you. Yeah. And, we talked about it earlier, Dave. Joe Rogan, the other day said bread is poison. Boy, that's hard. That's hard to overcome something like that. But I think what's going to help us on this is technology. And, people don't like to talk about AI, and I'm getting older, and I don't know if I can learn how to use this personally. But, we're talking with people in a couple of weeks here about developing our own in-house AI model for Kansas wheat that's going to learn wheat, and it's going to create social media for us. Yeah. And so when it sees something like that, we can have that response.
Just kind of deploy it.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to analyze it, detect it, and respond to it. Yeah. And so that just boggles my mind thinking about stuff like that. But I think we do have to be more proactive instead of reactive, and we've got to be ready to answer those types of things. Because wheat's in a tough spot right now. It's getting attacked from a lot of different sides, especially on. I went to a board meeting the other week, and I won't name names here, but I pay attention. We had barbecued pork sandwiches for lunch, and how many of them didn't get a bun? And it was over half of them. Like, where are we? How did we get to this point? And I think we need to do some reflection on that and see, what's going on. But again, we'll lean on technology, and I think it's gonna come to our aid.
There was the episode that you had on the Weeds on Your Mind podcast where you interviewed the folks that were out of Colorado, and he was talking about how he's educating the nutrition crowd and helping them understand so they can take that message to the folks who are very interested in learning about it.
Yeah, and we don't have the power to reach out to every U.S. consumer. There is no national wheat checkoff like, the Eat Beef or, milk campaign. And but you do see a lot of commercials for wheat on TV. It's just every time you see a commercial for cereal or there's a lot of money spent on wheat advertising. It just comes in product form. But so we kind of have to influence people who can reach out to larger audiences. And it's almost like you got to have that viral breakthrough. Yeah. We just did a video in-house for Harvest for Kansas Wheat, and a young man named Gordon on our team did it, and it's got 120,000 views. Yeah. If you can get something like that to break through, those have huge impacts. Yeah. And what you do is you just keep throwing stuff at the wall. Yeah. And hope something sticks. And, I wouldn't mind finding a celebrity that would be in favor of speaking out on behalf of wheat, but that's hard to do.
There's one right here. His name's Dr. Brian Arnell. He is a celebrity.
I am to dozens.
Does he work cheap?
Apparently so.
Apparently so. Good dental
That's
program.
what the university keeps telling me.
Yeah.
Well, Aaron, thank you so much for going on with us today and,
thanks.
and telling us everything that you do with Kansas Wheat and of course the host of
the Wheats on Your Mind podcast.
There you go. And you can find out more information on that on our website, reddirtagronomy.com. So thank you again, Aaron. Thank you for listening in on this conversation of the Red Dirt Agronomy podcast. And if you'd like to join the next discussion, leave us a message on our website, reddirtagronomy.com. Or you can always send us a tweet. Our handle is reddirtag. We would like to thank Aaron Harries of Kansas Wheat for joining us this week on the podcast. And again, if you get a chance, visit our website, reddirtagronomy.com, to find out more information about all of our guests and any of the resources we discussed today or on any previous podcasts. For Dr. Brian Arnell and Dr. Radon Sherry, I am Dave Deacon, and we all want to thank you for listening. The proceeding is a copyrighted recording of Agnow Media LLC 2025. And yes, all rights are reserved.